The movie opens 30 years after a devastating nuclear war that has ravaged the Earth, leaving the ozone layer destroyed and the planet a barren, toxic wasteland. Most of the world has been scorched, and only a small remnant of civilization survives. We are introduced to Eli, the protagonist, who is traveling on foot toward the west coast of what was once the United States. Eli showcases remarkable survival skills, often hunting cats for food. Every night, he listens to music on his iPod, a relic from a time before Apple included self-destruct buttons in their products. Eli is seen reading a mysterious book. In the morning, he continues his journey and hears a few motorbikes, so he hides and witnesses a group of bikers swiftly kill the man and abduct the woman, intending to assault her later. Feeling a deep sense of sorrow, Eli wrestles with his instincts, but ultimately, after convincing himself, he turns away and resumes his journey. Shortly after, Eli discovers that his iPod has run out of battery. He heads to a nearby crumbling town looking for a store that would charge his iPod, finds one and is seen entering it. Meets the town's engineer. Eli asks if he can charge his iPod, offering a vintage lighter and some wet napkins in exchange. The engineer accepts the trade and informs Eli that it will take some time to charge his device. When Eli inquires about finding water, the engineer directs him to a nearby bar. Meanwhile, the biker gang arrives at the same location to meet their leader, Carnegie, the warlord of this desolate town. It becomes clear that Carnegie is desperately searching for a specific book and sends his men out daily in pursuit of it. The gang leader, Martz, presents a collection of scavenged books to Carnegie, but the warlord immediately discerns that none are what he seeks. Martz also hands Carnegie a small bottle of fluid, which the warlord recognizes as shampoo. Thanking his men for their efforts, Carnegie orders them to drink as much as they want from the bar. After the biker gang departs, Carnegie instructs Ridge, his right-hand man, to burn all the books. Ridge expresses confusion about why they would send people to hunt for books every day when they can't even read. However, Carnegie remains hopeful that one day they'll find what he's searching for. Later, he is seen with his blind mistress Claudia and washes her hair with the shampoo, telling her it might be the last one in the world, to which she seems pleased. Meanwhile, Eli arrives at Carnegie's bar and requests to have his canteen filled with water. While removing items from his bag, he accidentally knocks down a cat sitting on the counter. He quickly apologizes, briefly contemplates eating the cat later, and pays the bartender with a pair of gloves and a scarf. The bartender then calls over a young woman named Solara to fill the canteen with water. Moments later, Martz, the gang leader, approaches Eli angrily for knocking down his cat. Eli calmly explains it was an accident and expresses he doesn't want any trouble. But Martz, in a confrontational mood, attacks him. Eli counters by smashing Martz's head against the counter, causing him to bleed profusely, and says he wants no trouble, followed with a goodbye. As he prepares to leave, the other bikers gang up to attack. Eli looks around and then recites a Bible passage as he prepares to fight, and then launches a brutal assault, using his machete to slaughter the entire gang. Just as he's about to finish off the last man, Solara shouts stop. Eli stops and they both look at each other. Solara tells Eli, "That's not what the Bible is about." Meanwhile, Carnegie, who has been observing everything, is impressed by the traveler's abilities and invites him to his office. The warlord realizes Eli is from the former world and is an educated man. He asks if Eli can read, and Eli responds that he reads every day. Impressed, Carnegie urges Eli to stay in town and work for him, claiming he can offer luxuries others cannot access. However, Eli flatly refuses, stating his intention to continue his journey west. Although disappointed, Carnegie convinces him to stay for at least one night. Later, while Eli is in his room, Claudia brings him food, and he immediately senses she is blind. He asks if it's from radiation, but she explains she was born this way. When Claudia returns to Carnegie, she informs him that Eli is different from other men and won't stay. In response, Carnegie decides to send Solara to seduce him. This makes Claudia panic, and she begs him not to, as Solara is her daughter and breaks down crying. Later, Solara knocks on Eli's door. He lets her in and she tries to seduce him, but he turns down her advances. She then begs him to let her stay for the night, explaining that Carnegie will hurt her mother if she goes back. She insists she'll sleep on the floor, so Eli reluctantly agrees. The two then begin talking, and Solara, who was born after the war, listens intently to Eli's stories of the past. During their conversation, she notices a book with him and asks what it is, but Eli refuses to show it to her. Instead, he questions her curiously about where they get their water, but she declines to answer and says she can't tell him. Eli then decides to share his food with her and takes a moment to teach Solara how to pray before every meal. The next morning, Solara joins Claudia and Carnegie for breakfast. Before they start eating, Solara holds her mother's hands and recites the prayer, just as Eli taught her. Carnegie is shocked and demands to know where she learned it. When she doesn't answer, he angrily proceeds to hurt Claudia, forcing Solara to admit that Eli taught her the prayer. She also reveals that he had a book with a cross symbol on the front, indicating its religious significance. It's a Bible. Carnegie becomes elated, revealing that this Bible is the very book he's been searching for, and sends his henchmen to capture Eli. But Eli has already managed to escape. At the engineer's store, Eli retrieves his iPod and prepares to leave. However, Carnegie and his men arrive, demanding Eli hand over the Bible. When Eli refuses, and they begin shooting at him, but Eli dodges their bullets almost as if divinely protected, he shoots back and takes down several of Carnegie's men with his single handgun, killing his men scattered in different directions as they are seen falling like flies. He even manages to wound Carnegie in the leg before making his way out of town. Afterward, Eli is seen continuing his journey but is soon followed by Solara, who wants to join him. She explains that her mother thought she'd be safer with Eli than staying in the town. Eli initially refuses her company, but Solara promises to show him the source of water if he allows her to come along. Hearing this, Eli finally relents. Solara then leads him to the town's water supply, which turns out to be an underground reservoir. Solara explains, everyone who knew about this water source is now dead, and that's how Carnegie controls the town. Meanwhile, Carnegie gets his hurt knee treated and instructs Ravaged to gather the men and prepare to pursue Eli. Ravaged, confused by Carnegie's obsession with the book, questions the purpose of chasing down one man for it. Carnegie then explains that the book is more than just a text, it's a weapon. By exploiting its teachings, he believes he can inspire faith and hope in people, turning them into loyal followers who would do anything he commands. With an army of fervent believers, he can expand his influence across larger territories. That's how religion was historically used to control people. Later that evening, Eli and Solara take shelter in the remains of a power plant. Curious, Solara asks why the book is so important, prompting Eli to share his mission. He tells her that this Bible is the last known copy, as all others were destroyed in the aftermath of the nuclear war. Eli reveals he was fortunate to survive the war. One day, he heard a voice from above guiding him to a specific place where he discovered the Bible. Since then, this voice has directed him to travel westward until he finds a place where the book will be safe. The voice also promised Eli protection throughout his journey. For the past 30 years, he has been traveling west, led by his faith and faithfully reading the Bible every day. The next morning, Eli and Solara continue on their path and eventually come across a house standing alone in the desert. They try to enter, only to fall into a pit, realizing it was set as a trap by an old couple. George and Martha appear, pointing a gun at them. Initially hostile, the couple's attitude shifts when they notice Solara, and they invite the two inside, offering them tea. Eli and Solara quickly notice George and Martha's hands trembling uncontrollably, which makes them uneasy. They also spot a large cemetery in the backyard and suspect the couple might be cannibals, or perhaps just very old. Realizing the situation, George tries to stop them with a gun, but Eli draws his weapon, and they manage to step outside. Just then, they see Carnegie and his men arriving in vehicles. They are shocked on being found. With no other choice, Eli and Solara retreat inside and George locks the doors and shows Eli his stock of weapons hidden inside the couch. Carnegie, using a megaphone, demands they come out with the book. When he receives no response, he orders his men to open fire on the house. Fearing they might all die, George reveals a hidden stash of weapons, and the four begin shooting back at the attackers. However, Carnegie's men, equipped with far superior firepower, overpower them. The elderly couple is eventually killed, while Eli and Solara are captured. Carnegie demands Eli reveal the book's location, but Eli remains silent and says nothing. When his men search Eli's bag and find nothing, Carnegie threatens to harm Solara, leaving Eli with no choice but to admit he hid the book behind the TV. Overjoyed, Carnegie asks his men to rush inside the house and retrieve the book and hand it to him. Once the book is in his hands, he shoots Eli in the abdomen, mocking that he's just a man after all. With Solara in tow, the group leaves as Eli collapses to the ground. Later, Solara is seen in a van while Carnegie is in a separate vehicle. Noticing Eli's machete on the dashboard, she devises a plan. Moments later, she uses a hidden rope to strangle the driver, causing an accident. Amid the chaos, she grabs the machete and kills Ravaged and the remaining men. She exits the van and detonates another vehicle with a grenade she found in George's stash, leaving Carnegie horrified as his men are blown up. Solara then steals the van and heads in the opposite direction. Running low on fuel, Carnegie decides to return to town instead of pursuing her. Soon after, Solara heads back to the house where Eli was shot, She tries looking for him outside but doesn't find him. He isn't inside either. She drives west and eventually spots him limping along the road. She gives him water and are seen driving away west into the dry desert. As they treat his wounds, Solara asks Eli curiously that how could he give up the book so easily, especially after everything he has done to protect it all this while. Eli says the central message of the Bible is to help others, so he did. Eli is then seen resting. Sometime later, the two finally reach their destination and find the ruined city of San Francisco. The bridge leading into the city is collapsed, so they leave the car and board a boat they find on the shore. They cross the river and proceed to the former prison island of Alcatraz. Moments later, guards point guns at them and demand to know their identity. Eli introduces himself and declares that he holds the only copy of the King James Version of the Bible. Hearing this, the guards allow them to enter, where they discover a small community who live on the island. The leader, Lombardi, greets them and gives them a tour of the place. He explains that the people here have gathered remnants of civilization and preserved significant literary and musical works from the past. They have even repaired a printing press to share this knowledge, but they are missing one key book, the Bible. Meanwhile, Carnegie has returned to town, but his condition worsens as his wounds deteriorate. He tries to open the Bible but finds it locked, which frustrates him a lot. He calls in the town engineer and orders him to carefully unlock it. After a lot of effort, the engineer succeeds, but Carnegie is shocked to see that the text is written in Braille. Desperate, he approaches Claudia and urges her to read it, but she lies, claiming that she has forgotten how to read since it has been so long. She also informs him that she can smell the infection in his wounded leg and senses that he will die soon. To make matters worse, Carnegie's relentless pursuit of Eli has depleted his henchmen. As a result, the townspeople have risen up and, after slaughtering the remainder of his men, the city descends into chaos, and Carnegie can only watch helplessly as he succumbs to his injuries. Meanwhile, with his last remaining strength, Eli recites to Lombardi all of the Bible verses he has memorized from reading it so many times. The fact that he is dictating rather than writing it down, along with a camera panning to his gray eyes, suggests that Eli is actually blind. Despite his condition, he has made it this far with the help of a higher power. After the manuscript is completed, Lombardi prints Eli's recited verses using his printing press. He places it in his library with the Hebrew Bible, the Quran, and 50 Shades of Grey. As the Bible finally finds its rightful place, Eli feels that his life's purpose has been fulfilled and takes his last breath peacefully. In the final scene, Lombardi advises Solara to stay on the island with the civilized, but she declines the offer. The movie then comes to an end as she takes Eli's weapons and ventures out into the wasteland to rescue her mother. That's the end of the video. As you would agree, it takes a lot of time and effort to produce these videos. So if you enjoyed it, please consider dropping a like, leaving a comment, and subscribing to the channel. It will only take a second of your time, but will help us a lot and motivate us to create more content like this. And don't forget to click the bell icon to stay updated on our next video. Thanks.